Legion Season 2. First of all, Legion first season was awesome. It was very uniquely done. Just the visuals in that show, I got an overview on my blog, soundedbettermyhead.com. There's also going to be a version of this review on there with pretty much no spoilers. So if you want to check those out, that's cool. I'll put the link down below. Season 1 was awesome, but this new season was just pretty lackluster. I think one thing that helped the first season was the story was pretty basic. It's the hero's journey. You got this guy, he's already had his powers, but he just doesn't know he could be a hero. And as a huge X-Men fan, I love that because you didn't know how into the X-Men universe the show was going to get. It's not part of the X-Men movies, it's kind of its own separate thing, and it's real quirky, so you're wondering, are they even going to tie it into anything really hardcore with the X-Men comics? And as you go on, you see that the Shadow King is the main villain, and you see that Professor X is pretty blatantly hinted to be David's father. So just seeing all that stuff come to life, and just the little clues that they drop as they go along was a really good way to do the first season. But the second season, basically the plot is the Shadow King is out there and he's trying to get his body back. He's currently in Oliver's body, and the Shadow King wants to get his body back. If he does, he becomes like unstoppable. But everyone wants to stop him, except for David, who finds out in the future that Shadow King needs to be alive, otherwise it's going to be the end of the world, and he doesn't know that supposedly the end of the world comes from David himself, and that the Shadow King is the only one that can stop him, which is not a bad story. It's pretty solid. You got a little kind of Days of Future Past kind of thing going on with time travel and whatnot, but just the execution was poor. What really makes Legion work so well is it's just so quirky and it's just weird, and just people just break out in the dance out of nowhere, but it works for the story. And this season they just want weird just because it's fun to be weird. They want they just want to be like, we got to do something different and silly. And the best example of this is the Division 3's leader, Admiral Fukuyama, who basically he's got this big wicker basket on his head, which I guess does have some real life parallels to I think it's Japan, where there are some monks that wear what looks like a basket on their head, but out of context it looks silly. And then occasionally we get this wicker view where we kind of see what he's seeing, and he can't talk. He has to talk through these robots, and the robots are basically a small army of like really young hot chicks in like tight like black spandex that got these little kind of bowl cuts and a mustache, kind of like the old Sonny Bono from the old Sonny and Cher days kind of thing going on. And then when they talk, it's got this kind of vocoder effect, so it's supposed to sound like they call it singing, but it's just this, I don't know, it's this weird effect. They got these little blue light up collars on. It's just weird. And then every time they show them with the Admiral, they get these magnifying glass things in front of their head, so it's just weird for weirdness sakes, and I thought that just didn't add anything to the story. And then the other big thing is that kind of screws this season up is you don't know if you should root for David the whole season, because his goals are different than everybody else, and then it doesn't look like what he's doing is going to be the smartest thing, because Shadow King is evil, and if he gets more powerful than he was in the first season, that would be horrible. It just seems like it's just not a good idea, and he's going around behind the back of his friends. I mean, luckily he lets Sid in on it pretty early on, but by the end of the season he does some pretty messed up stuff. And the short version is there's a point where he essentially date rapes his own girlfriend. And I mean, I know what they were trying to show David's mindset was, that he was basically just erasing a recent memory she had that made her turn against him and want to kill him. So he's basically getting the Sid back that he had from a couple hours ago, and that Sid was madly in love with him. But her point of view is like she decided that he was evil, and he basically raped her, which is a pretty heavy thing to end the season on, and I don't see how you come back from that with that relationship. And that relationship was another thing that helped not only carry him through the first season, but still made it relatable in the second season. They brought a lot of characters back this season from the first one. I think pretty much everybody. And I was hoping that we'd have a chance to really expand on him, get some background on him, a little bit more about these characters. And you didn't get much of that. Melanie pretty much spent 90% of the time just getting high in the background. Every time you see her, she's stoned or she's just pissed off about men, and she doesn't get to do really anything until the end when she basically gets possessed by the Shadow King and pretty much gets in Sid's head and turns her against David. See a bit more Oliver, but you don't get to see him much being Oliver because he's possessed by the Shadow King. You see some back and forth between the two. You get a little bit more taste of what his personality is, but by the time he's normal, it's basically he's at the end, he's near death, and then we see him again 3 years in the future. Apparently he's fine and back in the ice cube with Melanie, and it's all good for those guys. So I guess they got a happy ending. I always forget how to say the character's name because they don't say it very often. I think it's Tanami. Not much with him at all this season. He's there, you find out how much of a burden it is to have perfect memory, and they basically kill him off and put him in this mainframe, and you kind of see him one more time, and I don't know, it's just weird. It was a weird ending for him. They didn't expand on him very much at all. Who else we got? The Curies, they had a good storyline going where they looked like they were going to basically switch, where the girl Curie was stuck on the outside and the male could go inside of her and be in his own little world or whatever. But I don't know, they kind of got away from that aspect of it, but they did go to basically her being stuck out there, and she's beginning the age, and now she has to do stuff she's never really had to do because she's always been inside him and relied on him for sustenance. She has to eat now, she has to go to the bathroom, and they had some cute interplay with that, and they just didn't get into it as much as they could have and as much as I would have liked, especially because they're the next most likable characters on the show. Because even Sid is kind of unlikable to a point because she's a little standoffish when David first comes back, and then she finally gets on board with him, and it's not so bad. But then future Sid is so odd and so pretty much against David, and then at the end she completely turns against him and tries to kill him. The biggest addition this season is having the Shadow King be a full character on his own, Amul Farouk. Basically, he's just that suave, kind of smooth, worldly, smooth-talking character. He's like the devil that's on his shoulder, like the smooth version of the devil. Like he's evil, but he says stuff, and he doesn't really lie because he's not as bad as people say he is. And you kind of hint at there's more to him throughout the season. Like you pick up bits of things like what he was like before he was defeated by Xavier, and that he supposedly really wanted David to care about him when they were bonded in the first season. They just I don't know. They just kind of he's still around. He's still kicking. Apparently he's fine. He's got his own body back and out on the loose. I mean, not even on the loose. He's chilling at Division 3. They were supposed to give him a trial. You need to lock him away or execute him, but apparently, since David was a douchebag, Shadow King gets to just kind of chill. I don't know. They didn't really explain what the deal was at the end. Another thing that came back, it was kind of a pleasant surprise, was Lenny. I didn't know what they were going to do with her now that Shadow King really didn't need her anymore. And at first, they didn't seem to know what to do with her. She was just kind of there. He'd see her once in a while in Shadow King's memories or whatever. And then eventually they give her a human body, and she came back. And once she kind of got back out in the world, and you got a little bit how this is kind of Lenny before the mental institution, and how Lenny really was. I think she kind of became a more interesting character. You felt for a little bit. You started to be like, all right, she went through some shit too, and they breathed some life into her. I don't know where she's gonna go now. It's kind of cool that she left with David at the end. I don't know. They kind of implied that maybe in the future there's some kind of relationship between the two of them, and his shit with Sid's kind of jacked. I don't see how that comes back, so maybe that's his best bet. Like I said, there was a lot of weird bullshit this season, but there was some cool stuff. And, the little dance off in the first episode was pretty cool in the club, or some other odds and ends. Actually, I'll probably go through my notes and pick out some different things that caught my eye. There was also a subplot that ended up going nowhere, where there was this parasitic chicken, I guess you could call it, coming out of these eggs and infecting people's minds, and it seemed like it was tied to the Shadow King somehow. Maybe he turns everybody against David. I figured that's the direction they're going, and ends up just being this weird creature, and it kills Tanami, and David squishes it in the jar basically, and it just kind of, that was it. Like I thought there was gonna be a payoff to that. It seemed like it was building to something important, and it was just kind of weird. I mean, they only had an episode or two. No, I think it ended up being 3 episodes extra this season compared to last, and they just kind of wasted it on some weird subplot. I'm gonna say probably my favorite episode this season was the 3rd one, chapter 11. First of all, you get really good look at Farouk for the first time, like seeing him out there and what he's like. So that was pretty cool. David going into the minds of the different characters trying to rescue them, and there's just some cool stuff in there. Especially, I thought Melanie's was really cool with the text appearing on the walls around them and the Minotaur. And this is just like classic Legion. This is weirdness, but it was weirdness that works. It's because it's not in the real world too. It's in someone's mind, so I think that really sells it. And then you kind of got a little bit into the new relationship between the 2 Carries, so I'd say that was probably one I liked the most. Honorable mention will go to the episode where it's basically David seeing all these different realities out there of different versions of him. And at first I had no idea what was going on, and once you get in on it, and the ending was pretty well done, between about him and his sister. Probably my least favorite episode was the 7th one, chapter 15, which is where the whole plot about the delusion creature came to a quick end, and it was just done, and that was it. And you feel like you just kind of wasted your time with this whole storyline. Odds and ends for my notes here. Big one actually. Yeah, there's an episode where David goes on Sid's head, and it's basically her origin story, and it's pretty interesting. You learn a lot about how her life was. They made this big fuss about the climax being basically where she switched bodies with her mom and let the mom's boyfriend have sex with her and accidentally switch back in the middle, and he basically looks like he raped her teenage daughter. And it loses some impact because she told this story in season 1. So it's like, not like, oh my god, it played like, oh my god, this is so crazy. But I mean, it's definitely weird seeing it, but you kind of knew about it. I'd rather have them have something else like, earth-shattering revelation about her. And the whole point of her story went nowhere. It's just some of the weird stuff didn't work too. The whole trying to find that temple where Farouk's body was. There's a sequence where David's wandering in the desert for like forever, and then they find this tent where they apparently had been there before, and him and Sid died. And Farouk said he had to figure out the secret, and then nothing came out of that. It just pretty much went to Farouk luring Sid into a trap, and David just wandered off and found, the Shadow King, no problem. So that was another weird, not even weird, like crazy weird, but weird, like odd, dumb plot point. He also had a pretty weird sequence, a little quick glimpse of possible future where it looked like classic Legion from the comics. David with his hair all the way up, and it looked like Lenny laying there, like looked like she was pregnant. It was so quick. So I don't know if that's something we could expect next season, or is that the future that they were trying to avoid? I don't know. Season finale, it was okay. There's not really much of a fight scene, but except the opening sequence was so cool with David and Farouk both singing the same song, and Farouk initially sounds like he's singing it in his native tongue. I think he's Egyptian, and then you go into the whole cartoon battle sequence. And that was just, it was like watching like a Pink Floyd like music video or something. It was really well done, and then kind of ends abruptly, and you get into some weird shit where he basically makes you want to hate David the rest of the episode. I don't got a ton on this season. I just didn't care for it. I gave it about 2 stars. I could have went lower, but there definitely was some really strong stuff and some really cool visuals. So it probably could have went a half a star higher also. I think it was just disappointing after last season. I really can't think of too much to prattle on about. So that's about it. So thanks for watching. Check out my blog, soundbettermyhead.com. Check out my other videos here on YouTube. And thanks again.